Obviously, we're here to talk about The Stranger in My Home. This is based on a novel by Adele Parks, and it's so deviously twisted. I mean, what was it about, this project that, made you both want to get involved?
I mean, I'd say it's Adele's writing, wouldn't you? The to your point, the novel is juicy. It's such a rich portrayal of so many characters and this really heightened circumstance that I think also touches the center of a very primal fear we all have. And I think they did such a beautiful job adapting it and fitting this book into this film. And we read it and we're just like, yeah, sign us up.
Yeah, anytime there's an opportunity to play a character that has, you know, a quick descent into whatever it is an exciting opportunity. And I think every character in this film has that. It's sort of pedal to the metal and a wild ride, and nothing is what you expect. And when I read the book, I was like, man, how are we going to do this? And we did.
Nice. And you both have experience, working long term on television, in that environment, you get to spend, months, years, perfecting these characters and accessing them. How then, as an actor, do you then sort of pivot when it comes to, a film where it's a much shorter time? How do you go about accessing those characters in such a short time?
You want to start,
You
Sophia?
go. No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, as an actor, I've been on network television for like 14 straight years or 12, and I'm very lucky to have that. But the last two characters I've played have been for very long stretches of time. And that's lovely because you get to know every little facet of a person. But when you get an opportunity to play a new character, it is just like a shot of oxygen. It is so much fun to say, all right, roll up my sleeves, dive in. I'm going to read the book 3 times. I'm going to read the script 100 times. I'm going to make notes in the margin. I'm going to start researching. I'm going to, read stories about people who have been through similar events. And it's really an actor's dream to get a new role. So I'd say it was exciting.
I totally agree. It's, you know, both experiences are wonderful, but one is like going to a school that you love to look back on, and the other's like getting to go to summer camp. They're just different. And being able to sign on to something like this, where the humanity of every single character really is so present, has such a pulse, maybe because the script is adapted from such a beautiful book. But I just felt so ready to go on this one. And yeah, we all showed up to our first table read with, our notes everywhere and post-its flying and all the things. And I think we just knew that everyone felt ready to crack the code on something new.
And this, I guess, in a way, the premise of this story has been told a few times in thrillers to some extent. But I think typically the person who turns up on the doorstep is female. They're the person causing all the havoc. What do you both think that, having it being a male character that turns up, kind of, how does that spin this story around, do you think?
Well, I think there's a few things, that I can speak to there. I think first and foremost, Jeff, our director, made a really great decision, literally putting Allie and her family in a fishbowl. Immediately, it's it's a little nerve-wracking to have someone of Chris Carmack's stature, just on the other side of the glass from me. You're a big, physically intimidating dude. Thank goodness you're the nicest person alive. But I think having a man be the one approaching a woman that's so clearly exposed in that kind of subconscious way already from the moment it begins makes you feel a little intimidated. But, then you're also looking at this guy he looks like Superman. You want to trust him. He seems really nice, but there's something going on in the dynamic. And then when you realize why he's there and you realize that this, not only this woman's life, but both of these families are about to be completely upended, I just think it's a really cool idea to have it be the dad who shows up because we're just a little used to being nervous in circumstances like that. So it all kind of, lets the creepiness permeate quickly.
Hmm.
Well, to be honest, complete disclosure, I never even considered that. I never really even thought about it. I was working with the story we were giving, and I was the guy showing up. So in terms of like genre, it's usually the woman showing up at the door. Forgive me, I'm not
Hmm.
I'm not that familiar with the movies, I guess. Um, However, I do agree with Sophia that there's something very intimidating about, the father of her child showing up and the fear of it. That's the thing. One of the very first things that happens to Sophia, her character, and Chris's character is this sort of fear of like, is he gonna try for custody? Is he gonna try to take this girl away from me? And of course, that would go through a whole legal process, but just something about this being a big guy that might physically be able to do something if he were so
Hmm.
inclined adds an extra element of physical fear to the situation.
Well, and what I do think it also does very smartly, when you think about what stories communicate, what narratives do in terms of culture, I think to your point, historically, we often cast women as these sort of unhinged characters, but not to, be a Debbie Downer here, but societally, men do not handle rejection well. 73% of all women who are killed in our country are killed by former or current romantic partners. It is important, I think, to have frank conversations about the tools men don't have to deal with rejection. And I do think Chris does such a beautiful job here because this is a guy showing up to do theoretically a good thing for another family. And it's a guy that, as you get to know his motivations, you think, oh, things haven't been great with his family, and maybe he's kind of trying for a second chance in a modern way, expanding the sort of circle of what family means for both of these households. And you just don't know. And I think the unknowing, I think the nervousness is kind of inherent because we see the news. We know how these things can go. And so, yes, it's, Chris Carmack with a Colgate smile at the front door, but you're like, can I trust that guy or am I supposed to be scared of him? And the not knowing is sort of the point. And it really, it speaks to your capabilities as an actor and a communicator because you say a lot even when you're not speaking. And it was so much fun for us to constantly create the sort of seesaw swing of trust or terror, trust or terror. It was fun.
Yeah, it definitely comes across. It's absolutely fascinating. I could talk to you guys for hours, but our time is up. Best of luck with the release. I can't wait to get to talk to more people about it because it's so fascinating. There's so many layers that we could
Thank you.
talk for hours. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.